Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is our POTV Ukrainian show. My name is Sasha Star, and today we have a special guest, Dr. Lockwood. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Nick. Glad to be. Sorry, Sasha, as I got my wires crossed there as I was looking for Nick. That's okay. Glad to be here.
Good. And also, we will have help from Mark Lee, producer at POTV. Welcome to the show, Mark.
He's bashful.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get him later. Now, Ivan is not available today. He's not joining us, and maybe it's for the best because the theme of today's show is rather very sensitive, and especially to Ukrainians. Although I do consider myself Ukrainian, but I live in Canada for many, many years, and therefore I don't see its problem from or all this affair or all this horrible war from just Ukrainian perspective. I see it also from the world perspective and Canadian and US perspective just as well, NATO perspective, if you will. The thing is that finally, when Biden started openly talk about the Ukrainian problem, it's getting more and more difficult to hide and to avoid it. So as much as we would like to talk about the latest advancement of Ukrainian armies, although it's not a full-fledged attack as we were being preparing for, but it may grow into a full-fledged attack. Right now, it's still a probing of Russian positions. It's small but numerous advances across the whole front. Now let's come back to where I started. There are two problems. One problem is that administration of Zelensky is run by someone by the name Mr. Yermak, and it's accusation that he is involved in the highest level of Russian FSB, former KGB, on a very high level. And when Zelensky was just elected president of Ukraine, obviously he didn't know much about the international situation, about all these intricacies of running the country. And the first thing what Yermak did, he took Mr. Zelensky and they flew to Oman, where they have numerous meetings with Russian operatives there, and they're very politely but quite persistently told Zelensky that Yermak is the man that you have to talk to, listen to, be friendly with. And after that, Yermak was appointed as the head of president of Ukraine, and he is now running everything. There's nothing can happen in Ukraine without Yermak's authorization. So therefore, the question of Ukraine joining NATO and Yermak will be at the height of his powers and running administration of the president. It's a very, very dangerous thing, not only for Ukraine, but for NATO itself, because all the secrets and all the vital information could be shared with Russian operatives. And it's not a fluke that Biden, already quite a while ago, he supplied a list of over 50 people that must go. They don't have to be tried. They don't have to be hanged or otherwise. They have to just go from the administration of the president. There are a list of, I think it was 53 people. I don't remember exactly. It's over 50. And number one name in that list is Mr. Yermak. Well, that's number one. Number two is right now there are meetings to decide the plan of rebuilding Ukraine, which is a very difficult proposition with the level of corruption in Ukraine remaining the same as now. So, beside all the risks involved to try to rebuild a country which is bombarded every day, there is also a huge risk of corruption that all this money simply will go to individuals that have no business in rebuilding the country and should not touch these funds. And the best way to do it is to get them out again and again. So the fate of Ukraine to be continued to supply by Western uh, help, weapons, and so on. The future help of rebuilding Ukraine, the fate of the result of the war, and finally the fate of Zelensky, his own fate, could be predetermined the way Ukraine is going to deal with this problem. There is an opinion that I've heard more than once that all the fighting between Ukraine and Russia should be over by no later than December 29. Why is that date? Because on March 29th, 3 months after December 29th, there will be presidential election of Ukraine, and it's believed that General Zaluzhny will be number one choice to become a president of Ukraine, which is vitally important not only for fight with Russia, but also for rebuilding Ukraine. Whether Zelensky will be up to the task and deal with these problems timely, we'll see, and I think we'll see it very soon. Jonathan, as
Oh, what do you
always,
think? What do you think about all of this, Jonathan? Oh, thank you.
absolutely right.
I'm just sitting here waiting for the grenade. Okay, where's the grenade? Come on. All
Well,
right.
I gave
Don't say
you
my life.
enough preparation time, didn't I?
I tell you. Well, in any case, I absolutely agree. As a retired intelligence officer, I absolutely agree on the necessity for making sure that that the country that you are supporting is not ridden with people working for the other side. The counterintelligence and the necessity for solidifying the internal political stability of Ukraine is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, all of our aid efforts are going to complete waste. And so, in any case, the battle now shifts from the strictly military to the internal political struggles. And the Biden administration has a very challenging problem on its hands, and especially not only to preserve its credibility worldwide, but also to maintain its credibility with its NATO allies, to make sure that they're not wasted, that their efforts are not just going completely for naught. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And it's also interesting to see why Mr. Zelensky has been making so many trips abroad to shore up support for Ukraine. It becomes no mystery given the additional information that you have provided. So now, it's it's also very interesting that this is going on while Ukraine is conducting a rather successful counteroffensive, although again limited in scope. They have not committed their main forces yet, simply because they're looking for the proper moment and the proper opportunity to deliver the knockout punch instead of just throwing jabs, because that's what they've essentially been doing, throwing jabs all across the front and keeping the Russians occupied and distracted. So right now it is. No, I agree. We have a very delicate political situation internally with Ukraine, and it is now just as much in the realm of the diplomats and others within the Western countries to make sure that Ukraine is not undone by internal sabotage and subversion.
Very well. I think that due to his background, I don't think that Mr. Zelensky, without somebody as Yermak, could actually run the country. And because it's a extremely complicated endeavor to run any country, and never mind Ukraine. You have to watch in the political end, and economical end, the military end, and education, culture. I mean, there are so many things that one man simply cannot do it. So essentially, he outsourced of the governing of Ukraine to Yermak and his people. He cannot control them, he cannot question them, so he has to go alone as these people do. And essentially he left for himself public relations, international connections, and all the trips abroad that you mentioned, and so on. So that's why basically he's limited himself. Can he continue to be a president of Ukraine without Yermak's help? What I'm afraid is that it's now coming to a head, that essentially Biden, who did so much for Ukraine in the last year and a half, if not longer, he will eventually, fed up with this Yermak's business, and he will actually will stop, or at least temporary, stopping providing this vital help, which will jeopardize everything what's been done so far for Ukraine, and which will embolden Russia to become more aggressive. They're already aggressive enough, not that they urge them to become even more aggressive. I don't think they can. But now there is some noise about their being prepared to use tactical nuclear weapons. And even Biden himself just said to that effect that he's really afraid that Moscow will use tactical nuclear weapons. Um, is he right about that? Well, when President of the United States says something, you have to listen rather carefully to what it is. Jonathan, there is no one else but you to address it.
Okay, that last question again. I couldn't quite hear you.
The last question is that I'm afraid that now Biden will be fed up with Yermak and all this business so much that he may postpone further help, or at least temporary help, to Ukraine, which will embolden Russia to be even more aggressive than it is now. And now even Biden himself voiced concerns that Russia, in fact, may use tactical nuclear weapons.
Well, that the use of tactical nuclear weapons for the Russians is really their last throw of the dice, because they certainly do not have the conventional capability, as we've seen thus far, to even put up a really good defense against the limited Ukrainian counteroffensive. So it may reach a point where the Russians, yeah, like I talked about, in a sort of a last desperate lashing out in an effort to reverse the situation, and that's when things could really be very destabilizing, both for Ukraine and for NATO. And it's I am concerned that that the danger of miscalculation at this point is very high, that the Russians may overestimate the effectiveness of their own tactical nuclear weapons, even if they did reuse them. But there's no overestimating the potential response of NATO should the Russians go nuclear.
But John, I would like to ask you this: the Russians, Putin personally, were warned by the West what's happened in case of them using tactical nuclear weapons. And as you just mentioned, correctly so, that they're not sure themselves about readiness of their weapons and effect what they will in fact have with all the possible repercussions from the West. So why don't they use conventional weapons, what they do now, even all the super weapons like Kinjal and others, and inflict as much damage on Ukrainian infrastructure, and especially there is a economic consideration for Russia is that now estimation of helping to Ukraine is anywhere from 400, say roughly 50 billion dollars to $1 trillion. But if Russians will continue every day from 6 in the morning to midnight, bombard, God forbid, all the Ukrainian cities, all the Ukrainian infrastructure, keep killing as many Ukrainians as possible. That number from 1 trillion can go to 5 trillion. There will be eventually a situation when there is no money in the world to help to rebuild Ukraine. And in the meantime, Russia will be laughing, okay, look at this, all this helpless NATO and all others, and there is nothing they can do about what we're doing. How to deal with this situation? And they don't use so far, and not hopefully will not use the nuclear tactical weapons.
Again, it's a no-win situation at this point. Yeah, whether Russia and Putin choose to play Samson in the temple and bring everything crashing down, they want to see chaos. They don't want to see stability. It's quite clear.
I have an interesting idea, Jonathan. If remember, I think probably it was Clinton who first said it's economy stupid,
Oh
and
yeah,
won
back in the
election.
'92 campaign. Actually, it was his campaign manager, James Carville. Yeah,
That's
it's the
correct.
economy stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes he's on TV, he's still active. But let me ask you this: why Putin will not say that? Okay, if you pay me, not a West, European Union, whoever else there, pay me say $100 billion, and I will stop all the bombardment of Ukraine. Let's see for a month, and then we'll talk. We'll see what's happened. What would happen? Do you think?
I don't see that happening.
But that would have fast.
You have Putin thinking like either a capitalist or or a mafia type
But this is
trying to
classical
blackmail it.
blackmail, I think.
Yeah, blackmail and extortion. Yeah,
Classical extortion, of course.
I don't think that's going to play very well with NATO.
Mm.
I don't think it will be that would be a convincing ploy.
So he will say, okay, so I will continue whatever I'm doing now, and until give you another few days to think about it, and have huge hits on Ukrainian cities everywhere and so on. I don't know. It's there is some kind of there must be some kind of system in this madness. What's happening right now? I'm trying to look at each and every way to find out what this madmen what they're trying to achieve. They're just destroying without any responsibilities, without any uh, payback time. Although hopefully there will be a payback time. What do you think, Jim?
Again, really have no answer at this point because it's not clear whether I would have to say keep looking at the Ukrainian counteroffensive for a major push because pretty soon the Ukrainians are going to try to settle the matter on the battlefield themselves and inflict a decisive defeat on the Russian forces. Yeah, because at this point, it will only a decisive defeat will compel uh, Putin and his forces to seek even an armistice or a ceasefire. But it has to be when the Ukrainian armed forces throw their main counteroffensive punch, they have to make it count.
And I think that's what we are going to witness in the next few days. There were some talks about delaying the major attack maybe for another week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe. Wait maybe for the summit in Vilnius, NATO summit or so on. But there is no point really waiting for that to happen. In fact, the more successful Ukrainian offense will be before NATO summit, the better chances Ukraine has to be. It's not going to be admitted to NATO right on this Vilnius summit, but at least there will be perhaps a roadmap of what's required and what's the procedure and timing of Ukraine joining NATO later on. Another thing maybe that could be discussed bilateral agreements between Ukraine and some of the NATO countries, including United States, maybe Great Britain, maybe Poland, maybe some other countries. Don't forget about this military status of Israel, which is not part of any blocs, but it has a very good relationship with U.S. military, and they were able to uh, build with the Western help formidable military machine. And maybe that's Ukraine has to look at more and more because sooner or later there will be some kind of a peace or some kind of at least agreement to stop the fighting. And what's the best guarantee for Ukraine that Russia will not ever do it again? It's a super strong Ukrainian army. That's by far the best guarantee of Ukraine never being attacked by Russians. Forget about NATO, bilateral agreements, or anything else. Ukrainian super strong army, it is the best guarantee that it will never be attacked again by Russia. What do you think about this?
I think that you're right in the sense of the Ukrainian military has to be made as strong as reasonable as realistically possible, but that has to be buttressed or integrated within a what I've described before as a global ballistic missile defense system where you have the U.S. and its NATO allies constructing a global BMD, which would feature an upgraded U.S. Space Force with a space fleet. The space fleet would be armed with laser weapons capable of conducting boost phase ballistic missile defense. Yeah, against to go along with the Patriot system, and that would provide a very powerful shield against any missile attacks of any sort by Russia, and would deprive them of any strategic initiative. So, if Ukraine is going to successfully deter future attacks by Russia, that it must be part of an integrated NATO ballistic missile defense, which would include on the eastern flank, it would include Norway, the Baltic states, and if possible, if you can convince Belarus to say, "Hey, move away from Russia. Your best bet is with us," and you would have a solid integrated ballistic missile defense front against Russian aggression. And that is how you would and underneath and behind that ballistic missile defense shield, the reconstruction and rebuilding of Ukraine could then take place. And doing things such as our sending, for example, I suggested sending an engineer battalion or two. It may take an engineer brigade to train and supervise. Not for the engineering brigade to do all the work by themselves, but to train the Ukrainian citizens and so forth in engineering type work and support that would accelerate the reconstruction of Ukraine and repair the damage and reduce the estimated time for full recovery of Ukraine. That is what I would see as the way forward. Uh, but right now, the issue turns upon convincing Russia that it cannot achieve through armed force or subversion on the battlefield. It cannot achieve it. And so, therefore, they have to cut their losses and retreat and accept the results. But they'll have to be compelled to do that. There's no sweet talking them into it. There is nothing that the Russians respect more than strength, and nothing they despise more than weakness, which is what has been said more than once in the past. I think it
Uh,
was Churchill. It was Churchill that said that, as a matter of fact.
yeah, and I think they've acted the way they did, mostly because of this exit of the United States from Afghanistan. It was perceived weakness at the time by Russians. So they said, well, look, the West is retreating, they're quitting Afghanistan, and they're not in a mood for stopping our aggression. And that's what emboldened them to do what they did. But I think, Jonathan, we are in agreement on many points what we've discussed today. I would like to say that my discussion with Jonathan, especially about this corruption in Ukraine and business with Yermak, may upset some of our fans. But I couldn't, I knew about that quite for a long time, but I was trying to avoid this as much as Ukraine is getting for its offensive ready, and now it's doing quite well on the battlefield. But what changed my mind is that the President of the United States, the staunchest supporter of Ukraine, is now voicing openly, loudly, his concerns. Therefore, we could not be quiet about that. However, the better days are coming, and looking forward to see you again Friday, same time, same place. Thank you very much, and glory to Ukraine. Bye bye, everybody.